Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP Morning Show.
Hola, bon dia, Alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show and the podcast and the occasional live stream, as it turns out. Our live stream yesterday was all about the power cut, the outage, the apagão here in Portugal. And at our meeting, we had a bit of a wash-up, a review yesterday. The San Martinho de Porto people got together to review how it occurred to us, how we could be better prepared in the future, how we could work together. And we came up with some great plans and shared some lovely insights. And at the meeting was Simone Torres Costa, who we've known, we've had on the show before now. And it was lovely to meet her and pick up our conversation about the, what can I call it? The inner work of moving to Portugal, if you like, which has profound implications for how our life occurs in the outer world. And I'm a big fan of personal growth, personal development, and taking care of what's going on inside. And we talked yesterday about the integration myth. We picked up on that. When I first came to Portugal, I wanted to be immersed. I said to people, I'm going to be integrated. I'm going to do my best to be integrated. And in the years that have passed and followed, I've realized that that's not as easy as it may seem. And in fact, it might even be impossible. Let's give her a nice big round of applause and find out what she thinks about it as a psychologist and coach and with a lot of experience in this matter. Simone Torres Costa joining us on the screen now. Hola, bon dia.
Hello, Carl. So nice to be here.
It was lovely to see you yesterday and fantastic to pick up on this conversation, which we're calling the integration myth. And you may have recognized that scenario I just put to everybody about when I get to Portugal, I'm going to immerse myself. I'm going to be integrated within a few weeks and all is going to be well. It doesn't really work like that for us human beings, does it?
It does. And I like the way you put it. I mean, our inner world impacting our outer world, because that's all about, the limitations of being humans. We have limited capacity, or we focus on one thing or we focus on the other thing. So there seems to be a big dilemma in the inner world of integration, Carl. It's how much am I going to focus and value and maintain the new culture and the local place, and how much am I going to value and actually maintain actively my country of origin? So we have this basic dilemma, and it was great to talk with you, because this shouldn't be so heavy conversation. I think we talked yesterday, it's a bit of having the right expectation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you alluded there to there's a lot going on, and we can only give so much mental energy and space to so many things. And this is one of those sort of idealistic things that I think people tend to say. I've heard other people say it. I say it myself. And actually, I had a really good conversation with somebody the other day who I'm interviewing later this week. I won't give her name away at the moment because I haven't asked her permission. But during the conversation, she revealed to me that she'd kind of given up on this idea of integrating and had become a lot more realistic about her expectations, realizing that it wasn't going to happen. And I've come to this from a number of directions, learning the language, my lived experience rather than my idealized expectations of being here. And one of the really funny things that came up in the conversation is like, we're here in Portugal, and it comes from a great place. It comes from wanting to integrate, to fit in, and to be a useful human being, I think, within the culture that you've come to. I think that's a really noble expectation and intention. But interestingly, when you look at Portuguese people moving abroad, or anyone for that matter, they face exactly the same thing. They tend to set up in communities of like minds, of like culture, and that's what human beings do all over the world. So we needn't give ourselves such a hard time about this, and we can manage our expectations a little bit better, right?
Yes, I think you put it really nicely, because it's about expectation. Having the best intention to integrate, that's a good starting point for everyone. But if I may, I would like to define what integration is, at least from a psychological perspective. I will not go into very technical terms, but we're we're basically talking about psychosocial adaptation. What is that? Psycho is actually what goes on in your mind, and social is how you express that, socially speaking. Let's give an example of this definition. The definition is how I value, that's the idea, and how I maintain those cultures that I'm involved with. And I mean being part of the culture. Like if I would ask your audience, how many of the expats living in Portugal have been to the celebration of the April 25th in Portugal? That would actually be an active partaking of the society. And how many of us actually do that? And this is part of the definition. First, I value the culture that I'm involved with. That's one part of the definition. And second, I'm actually taking part of it. Yes. So if the main idea is that, okay, I'm going to move to Portugal and I'm going to be integrated, what does it actually mean? I know I have deep respect, I have enough opportunities, I have the language, and I'm going to be part of the society. But how realistic is that for a grown up not speaking Portuguese, right?
It's a really good question. I think that the kind of dark or downside of it is if you constantly are driving yourself with a really large expectation of that kind, it can actually, like you say, it can become a bit heavy, and then you can feel like you're failing, and then that brings with it some mental health issues, possibly, doesn't it? Your experience of being here, despite your best intention, might feel like you're failing.
Yes, I think it's really worth talking about that. So let's imagine that we have a few strategies to integrate. The first one, we call it the full in. I mean, you only speak Portuguese, you only meet your Portuguese friends, and you are trying to assimilate. That's the name of the strategy. You forget where you come from, which is in theory very difficult.
All those expats, those foreigners, I'm not going to be hanging out with them. That's one.
Exactly. Like, I'm just going to meet my neighbors and so on. That in theory, that's one approach. The opposite is, I don't care about where I'm living. I have been moving so often in my life. I'm just going to meet expats, and I don't really care where in the world I am. So we have these two opposite things. And then we have something in the middle, which is, I'm going to try to keep, as we were talking yesterday in our conversation, and that's actually a more balanced approach, which is having one leg anchored in my own culture, and having another leg anchored in the local community and culture. And this is the balance that we are looking for. This is a more realistic balance to expect, because as you were saying, what is it that we already know that doesn't work for our mental health? This is actually the opposite, is having no legs nowhere, which means I am not able and willing to invest my time and energy in the local culture, and I don't have the time and energy to keep up with my friends, to keep up with where I come from. And that you put yourself in a very segregated zone. And this is, as we were talking yesterday, this is the strategy that intentionally or unintentionally will have an impact on your mental health. This is when you don't have an anchor anywhere, and that is highly associated with depression and all the other mental health struggles that we have nowadays. So instead of expecting too much, you actually have to be part of it.
And be
It is
realistic,
more
right?
or less.
Set realistic or manage your expectations to be realistic. I love your analogy, if that's what it is, or your model here. You know, what the back foot is connected, anchored, as you say, in your original culture. And it can't be all bad, because that's another thing, isn't it? That people, because this is sort of like ideological stuff, isn't it? And we see what happens when people have an idealized version of something, and then the living reality. And if those are in conflict, that does cause problems, I think, for us, generally speaking, and not just in this area, but in all areas where that happens. But how lovely to acknowledge and connect with what's good about where you come from, where you came from, who you are, where you grow up, and your essential cultural identity. It can't be all bad. And I understand why some immigrants just want to burn that longboat and just ditch it. And that's worth looking at as well, why people feel so strongly about that, perhaps. And this is the sort of thing I'm sure you do in your workshops. But have that back foot there. And the front foot, you could say, because there's sort of like two dimensions to this analogy, aren't there? You're striding forward into your new life in the new place. And that is one foot in the future, in the new culture, and learning about that. But that suggests a steady stance, doesn't it? A sense of balance to these things.
Exactly. The author that we follow in this area, his name is John Barry, is a Canadian psychologist that has had lots of studies about these different strategies that people have and what the consequences are. So it is something to know about, to be aware. So we actually have an intentionally way of adapting. And I think it was a nice, our conversation in San Martino yesterday, because sitting on our table, we had someone coming from a specific country and saying, "Oh no, I don't want to have anything to do with people coming from my country, my own culture." And then we had another person saying, "Oh, I have lived 20 years in a different country, and I could not adapt at all. I had to move again after 20 years because Yeah, so we have all these cases, Carl, of different strategies, but I think I would call attention to it depends on where we are in our transition, as we were also talking yesterday. I mean, people have a honeymoon phase to coming into a new country, and that that's great, I love it here, I can even drop my own culture, it feels like that for a while. And then you have people that has been wherever you are for 5-10 years, that things change, things change. So it's not it's a very complex process, I would say. There is not a formula that works for everyone. The only thing we can guarantee is that what does not work for your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, because these frameworks are helpful, aren't they? And you also have to bring to the framework your personal experience and your honest analysis. And that's where you come in, isn't it? It's when people want to take the time to look at what's really going on rather than their idealized expectation, or that you're sort of pushing through. You're offering a space in which people can consider this and talk about it, right? That is your work, essentially, is it not?
Yes, it is. Well, there are different moments in this transition process that we usually intervene or we can help.
Right.
Usually, some companies and some people get lucky to get what we call intercultural training even before they move, even before they pack, because psychologically speaking, we are in transition from the moment we know we're going to move, that we sign the contract.
And the decision.
So everything, yes, because transition is a very emotionally rich experience, we usually say, because it really starts in the moment that I know I'm going to move, because I go through this process of saying goodbye and meeting people that I feel I will never see them again. You have to let go of lots of things, and in general it impacts our identity, who we are and who we want to become.
Yes.
So it is a whole process. So in the beginning, we can bring awareness to this. We call it the soft aspects of transitions, and also for my work, I can tell you that honeymoon people or people that still enjoying it don't really need to come to me normally.
Yeah.
I get them. I get people that have passed that phase of the honeymoon, and they're actually is struggling with the everyday integration aspects, and what does that mean for me as a person? What does that mean for me in the future?
Yeah. Right.
How I can actually keep up with having parents waiting for me at home, having kids that will move out. Um, how do I actually make my life, my international life, to work for me? So
Yes.
this is where I get lots of people.
Well, we'll find out how that works and how people can get in touch with you. But I think this is wonderful. And as you say, yeah, of course. And we don't mean to, there's an English expression of peeing on people's chips. We don't mean to pee on the chips of anybody who's in the honeymoon period. Enjoy it. Enjoy
Good.
all of your life in Portugal, whatever stage you're at. That's the whole point here. That's the reason we're having this discussion, is to help people enjoy the rest of their life here in Portugal, if that's what you're choosing. And the interesting thing, the interesting connection you've made, and obviously James has done this on our the old guy in Europe on a Monday morning. He made the connection between the infatuation and how moving to Portugal is like a relationship. People who are in that first glow and bloom and honeymoon period of a relationship aren't usually going to couples counselling, are they? They
No,
they
no.
go to couples counselling when they hit a little bit of a wall, or they don't feel quite like they used to. And maybe that's the sign, is it not? To then think, okay, maybe I need a little bit of help here.
Yes, yeah, I mean, you translated really, really nicely by giving that example. There's nothing wrong about being in the honeymoon, as long as you're aware that this is a phase, and then when you hit bottom, it's okay too. It's
Yes.
okay too to get irritated about cultural differences that we can't really help, and it's okay too. I think what we are aiming with this conversation is a general awareness, so you adjust your expectation and don't feel like there's something wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with us. I mean, we have to remember that our brains have been formed in a time where we could only go as far as our legs.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
the cave people, they were not prepared for all this intercultural adaptation, the intensity that we are exposed to nowadays. So we do have our limitations. And I also like to remember that some people move because there's something pushing them away from where they were, and some people move because there's something calling them in the
yeah.
next place. And sometimes we think it's the next place, but it's actually the next version of us that we want to get. And
Well,
this is
yeah.
also an inner work here, isn't
Oh,
it?
it's so wonderful to analyze that. You know, I think we've when we've talked before, we've talked about, you know, wherever you go, there you are, and with the luggage goes the baggage as well. And you have an opportunity, don't you, to when you get to a new country, to reinvent yourself and to grow. You know, it's such a wonderful opportunity to grow as a person. And I think that sometimes needs some honesty, some authenticity, and some help and support in these matters. And that's of course what you offer to people. But what a lovely opportunity to be honest about what's going on. And in my mind, I've got these, you know, I'm speaking from my own experience and what I'm observing in other people, having worked with a lot of people who moved to Portugal now. You know, we can all recognize in ourselves, I think, and referring to what you said about, you know, when you hit the bottom, or a wall of some sort, and things aren't quite working out, it's like, you can keep saying to yourself, this shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. Or that's interesting. Why is this happening? And that gives you a chance to really develop yourself, doesn't it? And develop your life.
Exactly, because it's not why is it happening? Is it what for?
Yes.
What is the opportunity here for me to become a better version of myself? I mean, we all know people that travel a lot, and they come home and they're exactly the same kind of person, don't we? So the idea of going through the integration, transition, and all that is actually to become more empathic to other culture or other people, and this is what the world needs. We need it kind of forces us to take the perspective of other people and become better But I'm not saying it's an easy process. It takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot of hard work and really wanting and exploring the possibility of what you want to become.
How beautiful is that? Because you are a foreign country as well. We all are, aren't we? We have parts of ourselves that haven't been explored. Just in the way that we think, I'm going to go there and I'm going to explore, I'm going to broaden my mind. That could also work on an inner level, isn't it? I am a foreign country to myself. I'm going to go inside. I'm going to take a look. That's not everybody's cup of tea. But for those who it is, people can get in touch with you, and you work in groups and one-to-one. Is that right, Simone?
Yes, I mainly work one-to-one because I think this is a very individual process, a very unique individual process with no formulas. But I also like to do workshops, Carl. So we have been thinking about how to better educate people that they are not alone in this process. So let's create more workshop opportunities for us to talk about that.
Wonderful. And we will, so we'll look at the integration myth on that level. We'll keep this conversation going, and we'll look to create a workshop of this kind. And of course, if you feel like you want some one-to-one help, reach out to Simone at torrescosta.com. And to either to Simone or to myself, if you thought to yourself, that makes sense, I'd like to be involved in that, reach out to either of us and we'll see what we can do to create and your preference is with the workshops, you want to do them in real life, in person, right? That's your preference.
Yes, it is. I think after the COVID phase of our lives, having personal contact is such a privilege, and I think this is we all need. And we felt that yesterday with the whole blackout in Portugal. Like, we need people, so we feel safe, we feel connected, and I think this is part of a health, mental health issue.
Absolutely. And somebody said yesterday, I need this. This is regulation is important, isn't it? And it was that coming together and being together and saying what needed to be said together in person was really helpful, I thought, yesterday.
Yes, it is great. And let's, of course, use the technology as much as we can, but also connect, and transformation and growth actually happens live. Absolutely.
Whether that's an expat meeting, foreigner immigrant meeting, and the sort of that, those are quite contentious in their own way, and they have their place, as we've discussed. That can be very, very helpful. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Or if you want something a little bit deeper, you know what to do. Reach out to Simone or drop me a line, and we'll make sure you're on the mailing list for the Integration Myth Workshop, up and coming. Have a great day, Simone. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye for now, everybody.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl brings the